special treat today. I have an interview, an origin story with Kevin Isaacson, my longtime friend. Perhaps we were competitors in the very beginning, competitors in business, competitors on the golf course, but friends through it all. So, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Jim. Thanks for the invite.
I have a bunch of sponsors I'd like to thank. It's not getting them out of the way. It's putting them front and center. Beckett Media, which includes all the different Beckett entities, ComC, Burbank Sports Cards, our mutual friend Rob Veras, Mike Fruitman at Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, and of course, Topps, Upper Deck, and Panini. Kevin, you're familiar with virtually all of my sponsors, and I'm hoping you approve.
Yeah, great folks all.
Well, tell us about your origin story. I know we met a long, long time ago when you were working for Crossley Publications and played many key roles there. And so we kind of started out competitors, but we've always been friends, and we played golf and had fun together. Certainly had great times out in Hawaii, where I believe you are now. But tell us about your origin story and how you got involved in the hobby, how you came to Crossley Publications, and where you are now, which is interesting.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Jim. Sports enthusiast and card collector as a kid, like many of us, and was also interested in journalism. And my career goal as a high schooler was to someday cover the Green Bay Packers for a Wisconsin newspaper. And shortly after graduating from college, I was so fortunate to have an opportunity to cover the Green Bay Packers for the Green Bay newspaper. My dream job, and I love doing it. But what's a great job for a young guy who's not married is not a good job for a guy with a young wife and two daughters. So it became apparent that, yeah, you're right. So it became apparent that I needed to find something that was more conducive to the lifestyle my wife and I wanted to have with our kids. So I was looking around, and there was a Wisconsin company that had a sports division. It involved collecting, which I'd always enjoyed. And the mix of sports and collecting and media led me to Crossley Publications. And that's really where our relationship started.
That's a kind of I mean, they were huge in our industry, but they were in a very small town, a very, kind of rural Wisconsin. Was that attractive to you, or were you a big city guy, or did you like being out in the country?
I actually, on the way to work in the morning, would see more deer and more cattle than cars. I know you live in Dallas, can't imagine that, but that's true. Every day you could count the deer and you'd see more animals than vehicles. And it really was appealing what Chet Crossley put together, just a very significant business in a tiny town, was amazing. And there were some, economic advantages that really, I think, propelled his business forward, that wouldn't have been as prevalent if he were trying to do it in a bigger city.
I'm sure our readers or listeners, whatever, anybody out there in the industry doesn't necessarily know that there's a big difference between an editor and a writer and a publisher and all these different things. But you moved, it seemed to me, from in your start in the hobby and your contributions, you started out very much editorial, and then you moved more into the business side of it. Is that kind of the journey that you took, or?
You're exactly right. I started just as a writer and loved it. But there was an ability to have more and different impact by working events and then leading teams and eventually moving to the business side. But at the core of everything I've done has always been communication, and specifically interpersonal communication. I really like working with people and helping people, and that's really what I do today.
So take us through give us a timeline here, because some of our listeners may not have been born when you and I met. So, I mean, what are we talking about here? Because you've had a lifetime of major contribution to our industry and to several companies. So give us a timeline with some dates.
I appreciate that, and it's kind of scary to think of that we met before some of our listeners were born. That's scary. That hit me a little bit. But I started working formally in the industry in the late 90s with Crossley, and had about a 5 or 6 year run there, working with the Sports Collectors Digest team and related publications, and then left to do some consulting and project work, and really did that for the better part of 20 years before I was fortunate enough to join your former company, Beckett Media, where I've worked and been affiliated for about the last 7 years.
What, listed off my sponsors. You did work for several of those, or at least their predecessors, perhaps. So tell us about some of the consulting you did. That was fun.
Glad to. Among other things, worked as a industry expert for eBay early in its iteration. They had a program they would employ or work consulting relationships with people who knew industries, because their market people were so new to various industries, and they moved them around every 12 to 18 months. They really wanted a stable presence in each of their core markets to help that new marketing person understand who to talk to and maybe where to go. So that was a fun relationship. For probably 10 years, I was the consistent player in eBay's sports collectible approach to the market, and they ran, I think, 7 associates through during that time. So that was fun. I was fortunate to work at Playoff with Ann Blake when she owned the company, and was helpful in when they acquired a baseball license to team with their football license, was able to participate in that, and had a whole lot of fun there. At some point, we can talk about the creation of the black box, which was so popular for many years at industry trade shows. That's something that I put together along with Tracy Hackler, Rob Springs, some of the guys who had at one point you had hired on at Beckett. We did some stuff when I was down at Playoff. And I've had the opportunity to work with really virtually every company in our industry in some form or fashion over, what is now, 30 years.
Can I ask you a tricky question? Since I think that's a very true statement. You have worked. Are there what company that is now no longer around, because there are some defunct card companies and others? Is there one in particular that you miss, that you really thought, what really had it going, and then they didn't, and not due to your consulting, but is there anybody out there that you think really brought something interesting to our industry that you missed, that you wish they were still around?
It's a great question. I liked the real high-end niche thing that Playoff had going when it was a football-only company. There were some really creative products, that, things that you just hadn't seen before. And I'm not sure how those folks did it, because it was a very small office, but there was some wonderful creativity that came out of that. That company obviously struggled as it got larger, and probably the too fast growth might have led to its demise. But there's some fond memories for me with Playoff, but maybe that's because that was what was happening when I was new to the industry, and I just thought those card products, the pigskin products and whatever, were incredible.
I think they were. Do you think they were just ahead of their time a little bit? Or
maybe so, and maybe there was the creativity maybe wasn't paired with enough business structure and backing. Maybe a whole lot of sizzle without the supporting stake.
So again, you started out as a writer, as editor, as a kind of a publisher guy, but in the business side, especially in consulting with these companies, you're probably more familiar than anybody on the outside, probably, of the fact that these products that collectors love to buy and open, they have to be profitable for the card company. They can't put, again, it's not $100 worth of value in a $100 box. Their cost has to be less than what they sell it for. And many of these companies put in a lot of expensive stuff. They have to pay for the autographs. The production values are high. Did you get into that in your consulting, of how to engineer more value without increasing the cost prohibitively?
I did, and it was a wonderful exercise. There are some really brilliant people who work for the card companies today, and some who've left. But it is both an art and a science what they do to be able to build a product that, from a collector's perspective, delivers value and is enjoyable. It's really amazing to take whatever you might want to say, $50 worth of legitimate expense, and create a box that sells and people are happy to buy it for $100 or more. There's some magic in that. I would suggest that.
Well, also,
I had the ability to work on projects and learn from people and maybe offer some ideas. But folks again like Nick Matevich, Rob Springs, Grant Sandground, there are some really brilliant people in this industry who do that day to day.
Yeah, and then the other factor that, again, I don't think that people think about this as much, is that same $50 cost that is put out at $100 SRP. That's also greatly affected by the just the quantity produced. If you produce too much, that's a problem. If you produce not enough, well, that's sort of good, but in the long run, the car companies are trying to, I think, produce to the legit demand. Did you get involved in some of that forecasting of that? Because you can't predict what rookies are going to hit big, but you hope that at least one or two or three will.
Yeah, again, there's a bit of science, there's a bit of art to it, but right now the kind of concern in the industry is there's not enough product available, and produce more people would buy more. The companies are having challenges acquiring enough autographs from compelling athletes to their products. So it's a wonderful in the industry and from a manufacturing standpoint, because they're producing to the capacity of the assets available. It wasn't always the case.
Kevin, we're almost out of time. I'm definitely going to do more episodes with you, but I'm trying to keep these episodes to 15 minutes or less, and we could go on and on and on. But last question: what was your favorite job or thing that you did in the industry? You're recapping your illustrious career. Was it something to do with the Hawaii show, or what was your favorite moment or your favorite position? What are you proudest of?
Probably what I do today with Beckett Media, because I'm in a position where I can work with guys like Brian Fleischer and Mike Payne and Ted Barker and many others, and just help them do really good things for the collecting community. They're collectors at heart, all of them. They're committed to the Beckett brand in the industry, and it's really just fun to be able to support them. I would say, though, with a little asterisk, the Hawaii Trade Show element to what we did was a blast, because again, I was able to engage directly with everybody who was trying to make a difference in the industry, and it was fun to have a little bit of insight into what they were trying to do and watch them leverage it during a week-long trade show in Hawaii.
Well, Kevin, you did a super job of that. That was always fun, and you brought a lot to it, and weren't always. Sometimes you were behind the scenes, but when you're involved, things happen. One thing I've learned, listeners, is that the older you get, the more important it is that you enjoy not just what you do, but who you do it with. And I've always enjoyed doing things with Kevin in this industry, and I'm glad I didn't know he was going to say that Beckett Media was one of his high points, but so be it. I'm the Beckett Publications guy, and Beckett Media is carrying on and doing a lot of good things, and they got a lot of good people, including Kevin, helping them. So thanks, Kevin. Thanks, listeners. We'll be back again tomorrow with another episode. And Kevin, I absolutely want to do future episodes with you. So again, thanks for being here and taking time out from your busy schedule to interact and share your stories with our listeners. So again, thanks everybody. Thanks, Kevin. Be back tomorrow.